entertainment to be had. There's energy in abundance. There's all sorts of things that we have that we take for granted. And we have it because lots and lots of other people in the world don't have it. And you can say, oh, no, that's because they live there and we live here, and that's why we have it. No, it's not why we have it. We have it because we hoard it and we use it for ourselves without regard to what happens to anyone else. That's why we have it. That's the way our system works. And it shouldn't work that way. And we should not be supportive of it, no matter how comfortable we are. And I'm pretty comfortable, I have to admit. I have a big house that I rattle around in that is far too big for just one person. But I got lots of stuff. Another sign that I'm an American. And I have my house full of lots of stuff, so it's actually kind of crowded in there because I have so much stuff. Yeah, and I eat regularly, and when I want to go to the store, I just go to the store and I buy something to eat. And I have a store within a couple of blocks of my house. And if I want to carry something somewhere, I have a truck outside that I just go in and start up and it goes. I have all these things. And yeah, I would be reluctant to give them up. But I have to recognize that I have them in part because there are lots and lots of people in the world who don't have those things and can't and aren't going to. Because I have taken all that and I'm hoarding it for myself. There are people in this town who don't have things, in part because I'm hoarding this space to myself. So I have to be aware of that, even if I am apparently not going to necessarily do anything about it. I don't know. I try to do things. I try to give back to some extent, but I don't do it enough. And I have to just accept that I am not living up to my own standards. But this kind of wandered a bit away from immigration. Partly the reason is I'm just sort of talking about this in a general way because this is sort of the situation that we live in. And this whole taking for granted thing that we do, we just tend to take everything for granted and go, oh, well, this is just the way it is. It's the way it is for me. And I'm tinker around the edges, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay that apparently that the police are killing people and that the government is ripping families apart and that all these things are happening. I'm okay with it because it's not affecting me. But it is affecting people you know, and that should be affecting you. In my case, I know lots of people from around the world. I know immigrants. I know people who are here without documentation. It's a whole gamut of people that I know, ranging from the good immigrants who come here the right way and who have made a success of their life here by, cutting out a tiny slice of the American dream for themselves, all the way to people who came here the wrong way, who snuck in and who are doing all devious and all these things and everything in between. And, people are people. There is not any real difference between this first group that followed all the rules as the, the right wing likes to call it, versus this group that didn't for whatever reason. They're all people. And that's the thing that's interesting. I don't understand why there's this whole group out there that is afraid of or antagonistic towards difference, I guess you would call it. People who speak differently or look differently or have different religions, different clothes, different whatever. I find difference fascinating myself, personally. I'm attracted to it. I work in a business where I meet a lot of people, on a regular basis. And most of them are predictable. They're the same. They live around here. They've always lived around here. Their families are from here. They share fashion sense. They have a similar way of talking to each other. They have similar kind of attitudes about things. You know, that's the majority of the people that I run into through my work. And they're fine. There's some nice ones. There's some funny ones. There's some interesting ones. There are some that I really do not like. I will admit it. But they're all, you know, kind of in the same sort of group, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying anything wrong with it, but I will say that I always perk up a little bit when somebody that's different comes in. And I don't mean different like wacky, like this person has some kind of mental issues, you know, and they're like talking to themselves or seeing things or whatever. I had a guy come in and it was weird. He was talking about how he could see ghosts. He thought there were ghosts in the place and he could see them. And the ghosts were talking about me, and he started to get really angry and you know, whatever. So I imagine he had some sort of mental problems. I mean, so that was interesting, but mostly in retrospect. While he was there, I was definitely worried about what this was going to lead to, because he bordered on being kind of violent. But he eventually just left, primarily because I have gotten to be fairly good at talking to people like that. So I can de-escalate them, it seems. It's a knack that I've acquired over the years of talking to people who were really out there in some way. But anyway, whatever that be, that as it may, the people that are different, who have different kinds of ways of speaking and thinking and different backgrounds, are always very interesting to me. I always enjoy the experience of being able to like observe and share some moments with somebody who clearly doesn't have my same list of memories and experiences, that they have a whole different set. And I don't know, I just find it very interesting myself. And I have friends from around the world, and I really appreciate the new things that they share with me, the stuff that I have never heard of before, or never tried, or never thought of that way, or whatever. I think that is a means towards growth, to take in things that are new to you, that are different, and that give you a whole new perspective. That, to me, expands a person. It makes you a more worldly. I guess there's a reason why they call it worldly, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. It just makes you a more well-rounded individual, because you have acquired this new way of looking at things and this new way of thinking about it, a new appreciation for something you never tried before or never thought of before. And I see all of those as really good things. And I don't know. I mean, I remember my first experiences as a kid with quote-unquote ethnic food, something other than Midwestern, you know, American cooking, like macaroni and cheese and hamburgers, you know, things like that. It was strange. It was different, but it was fascinating. And now I really enjoy trying new things. I'm squeamish about some stuff. I might take a look at it and go, no thanks. You know, if you describe what's in it to me, or if I'm looking at the ingredients and I'm like going, that doesn't even look like food, you know, I might be hesitant to try it. So it's not like I leap outwards into new things with my arms wide open. You know, I'm carefully walking towards the unknown, but I'm moving towards the unknown, cautiously, testing each step as I go. I'm not wild about it. I don't run screaming towards the abyss. But that's one reason why it is difficult for me to understand why people are afraid of what's different or afraid of change. It's really strange, but there's indeed a fear of change in this country that, I mean, I don't know. It's coming to the fore. It's being brought out and nurtured and promoted by the current powers that be, I guess you might say. So it's hard for me to understand that kind of thinking. And it's very difficult for me not to take every opportunity that I have to speak out for the benefits of diversity, of new things and new people and new ideas, which makes me think of, I have a friend who's at the university, and he recently was asked to do, I guess, an interview for something. I'm not sure what, but they wanted him to speak about refugees from an academic perspective and not as an advocate, I think is how he put it. And he was trying to figure out how he was supposed to do that, because he's an advocate for refugees. He believes in refugees. So how am I supposed to take off my human hat, basically, my human being hat, and just put on my academic, mortarboard or whatever you call that thing, and just speak? I don't know. I'm not even sure if the person who was asking that really understood what they were asking, but it just seemed like such a strange request. And that attracted me to this story in the New York Times recently entitled, "For Immigration Reporters, Objectivity and Compassion Don't Have to Be Mutually Exclusive." And so I thought I'd read that. I haven't read this yet, so I will share it with you for the first time. But it reads as follows. "The call from Honduras came on Saturday as I was about to go for a run. One of my contacts was in a village with the family of a 10-year-old girl who has been stranded in a Texas shelter for 4 months. The girl's mother was despondent. Her uncle, who had taken the child across the southwest border, had already been deported. Days had turned to months, and there was no knowing when the girl would be returned to her family. Miriam, do you have any ideas?" asked my contact, who is connected to the large Honduran community in New Orleans. She had been reading my articles about family separations and reunions. I had reached out to her on many occasions in recent years, seeking immigrants to interview and feedback on how policies were playing out on the ground. Now she was asking me, the impartial reporter, to get involved, to help. She had been by my side as I interviewed several families who had fled gang violence and extortion and ended up in New Orleans, and was aware that I know immigration attorneys and government officials. I am on the front lines of President Trump's crackdown on undocumented immigration, a campaign promise that he is steadfastly fulfilling. His administration's decision to separate children from parents at the border has become the story for immigration and border reporters at the Times, as well as for our editor, Kim Murphy. It has captivated and infuriated many of our readers. Following an international outcry, the president, on June 20th, signed an executive order officially ending the practice, arguably the most punitive border enforcement measure implemented by the United States in modern times. More than a month later, because of a federal court order, the government has been gradually putting children and parents back together. The separations have generated confusion and anguish for immigrants and their advocates, as well as border officials tasked with implementing the policy. Yet while it is difficult not to feel the pain of the migrant families swept up in the drama, I can still be objective without having to suppress my humanity. It's not something journalists often talk about. We have to be careful, of course, not to cast ourselves as advocates or problem solvers to the people we interview and the readers we serve, but we should not forego compassion. I have offered words of comfort to a suffering mother. How can one not? It does not mean I condone her decisions or actions. In fact, I might put myself in her shoes and question them, but I am not there to judge or to take sides. So after the call from Honduras, I decided to look into the case. I contacted a woman who seems to spend every waking hour deploying volunteers to provide transportation, accommodation, and legal assistance for separated and now reunified families. Within 2 days, the woman had found a lawyer to help secure the girl's release. The girl will almost certainly be in Honduras by the time this piece publishes. I have aimed to show readers the real-life impact of the so-called zero-tolerance policy through dispassionate portraits. 5-year-old Jose was separated from his dad and placed in foster care in Michigan. He never let the stick-figure drawings of his family and a sketch of his father out of his sight. Elsa was deported back to Guatemala without her 8-year-old son, Anthony, who remains parked in a shelter. Long after the stories were published, readers still remember them and write asking about the outcome for the subjects. Sometimes I have the answers. I move on to the next story and then to the next one. When I am in the thick of it, like interviewing moms just reunited with their children at a Greyhound bus station in Phoenix, I am singularly focused on obtaining revealing material in time for deadline. Your kids did not recognize you. Tell me more. I race to tap out a few paragraphs to dispatch to my editor among crying babies, disheveled beggars, and announcements blaring over the loudspeaker. The intensity of what I am witnessing sometimes only hits when I am in a hotel room alone in the quiet of the night. The reporting pace is often frenetic. But recently I spent many hours with a 5-year-old Brazilian boy who was separated from and then reunited with his mother. For a while, after going into temporary foster care, he was barely eating. When I met him, his trauma was manifested in ways that I will describe in an upcoming article. For now, I will say he did not welcome me or Todd Heisler, a Times photographer I worked with. As the day passed, the boy felt more comfortable in our company and behaved more and more like any kid his age, a fearless one at that. He dangled upside down from a jungle gym and swung from a rope at a playground. He cackled with glee as he sped his bike down a path in the park out of our sight. On the edge of the park was a pool, which he had been pining for. We stopped to inquire about ours, and I did the asking because his mother speaks little English. I also learned there were free swimming lessons and 2 slots left. I helped his mother sign up the boy and his 8-year-old relative, and they start on Monday. So that was kind of a dissatisfying article there. I thought it sounded good, but it just didn't. I don't know. It didn't really say anything. So basically, it seems to me this woman is excusing herself for both not really helping for the most part and for being human enough to want to help and occasionally sort of helping. I don't know. I don't buy it. She says, we have to be careful, of course, not to cast ourselves as advocates or problem solvers to the people we interview and the readers we serve. Why? Why would that be? Why can you not advocate or try to solve problems? Why can't you report on something and not take a side? Because you have a side. I don't know. I'm not buying this. I'm not buying this person at all. I'm not buying this person. I mean, this person is who she is, but I'm not buying this point of view. This sounds like more like an excuse and a way of kind of avoiding the point. That was interesting, though, because it did point out, though, why or how someone can ask you to speak on a topic, put your academic hat on and speak on a topic from an academic level without advocating for those people. It's because clearly this person, this reporter, seems to think that that is an important thing to do or to imagine that you are doing. When I get here and talk, I don't imagine that I'm speaking about this subject dispassionately. I don't pretend to myself or to you that I don't have an opinion, that I don't have a perspective, and that I don't have a point that I'm trying to get you to see. And I don't think I would want to try to report on this stuff or to talk about it if I felt like I had to try to do that. I really don't, because it's attempting to remove, what is it? I want to use the word judgment, but that's not really the word that I want to use. I mean, if I look, for example, if I'm looking out the window right now, the WRFU studio is in the Independent Media Center here in Urbana. And so there's the post office. As you come in the front door, if you turn right, you go into the post office. If you turn left, you go into the IMC sort of area. And as you're heading towards the IMC, you pass the WRFU window. So looking out the window, what I see are some post office boxes. That's really kind of all I can see. I can sort of see the vestibule off to the right, but it's divided up and, can't see much. If I lean really far to one side, I can kind of see out the window to the outside, but not really. But I can safely say, as I look across at the post office boxes, that the design is really crummy. Now, I'm not an architect. I'm not an architectural critic. I'm no expert in things like that, but I have opinions and I have the ability to recognize that it's disproportionate. There are two pillars. One is farther back, one sticks out. The post office boxes are all the way to one side, leaving a blank space on the other side. So it's like you take a box, a square, and you put it in another square, and then you just kind of move it over to the side randomly, and then there's trim around it that goes all the way across, but doesn't go down one side. So it's a poor design. It maybe structurally it makes sense. Maybe it's was the only way they could fit the thing in, but visually it looks terrible. No, terrible. That's too strong a word. That's hyperbole. It looks crummy. That's a better word. Some of the boxes have little stickers on them. The boxes themselves within the unit are nicely set out. They're proportional and, they're balanced and everything else. But just the way the whole thing is stuck into the wall is just poorly thought out. And I could say that without fear of contradiction. Someone might point out that there are reasons why it's like that. There are reasons why somebody painted the walls and didn't bother to take the paint off the wood that's not supposed to have paint on it and just left it there. Why the box is not centered, and I'm sure there are reasons for everything. But a designer or someone who cares about how the space looks would agree with me, I think. I don't have any problem assuming that a designer would look at that and go, yeah, that's pretty bad. That's poor design. They didn't try very hard. They just kind of slopped everything together and that was that. Called it a day. So I can do that. I'm reporting on this to you. You probably won't ever see it, but if you do walk through here, you should take a look to the right and look at the post office boxes and tell me if you think that was well placed and clearly thought out and someone cared about how it looked. They really cared to make it look good. And I don't think you'll agree with that they did. I don't think that's weird. What I think is weird is what Fox News does. if if I can go out on a limb here and criticize an entire news organization, they try to tell you only what will support their preferred position and not anything else. So what I just did was describe this layout. And I even gave you a reason why I thought it was kind of wonky and not set up that way. I think structurally it has to be. I think the boxes around the corner stick in far enough that these boxes had to move all the way to the right in order to accommodate them. I think that's why it's like it is. So I'm telling you, it may have been the only way they could do it, but they didn't bother to try to figure out a way of making it look like it was supposed to be that way. They just did it that way, slapped on some trim, and walked away. That is my impression of it. So I am giving you both a biased, this is my subjective viewpoint, and an unbiased, this is my intellectual side trying to rationalize why it may be the way it is. I'm giving you both of those viewpoints. I think that's reasonable. I think from that you can draw your own conclusions. You can say, well, he's too picky. Clearly, if that's the only way they could do it, they probably didn't have enough money or time to really, it wasn't on the top of their list of things to worry about. So that's probably why it looks that way. I mean, you can make all sorts of excuses for it or rationale for why it might be the way it is. I think that's a fair way of reporting. I think that expressing your bias, expressing your opinion, putting that front and center. So like, okay, here's my opinion. I am giving you my opinion about this. I'm being honest. Well, you don't know it, I guess. I mean, I could be lying. Maybe that isn't my opinion. But I mean, that seems to be honest. It gives you a starting point. Like, I know you have an opinion. If I'm talking to you for the first time, I know you have an opinion. You make a few statements about something, I get a sense of where you're coming from. You're in a bad mood. You didn't have your coffee that morning. You're crabby. And then you start talking about something. I go, okay, this is coming from that sort of mental space. That's what this person is thinking. I understand that. And then I can judge your opinion accordingly. But if you don't give that information, you pretend you are being unbiased, I don't know where you come into the picture. And then if you go take that a step farther, I mean, that's the traditional news kind of thing. You take that a step farther and go the Fox News sort of propaganda route and tailor the information. You give information as if it's unbiased, but you have carefully snipped and cut it so that only the parts that say what you want it to say are there. That's just basically lying. That's not even pretending. That's lying. That's outright lying. And I think that's wrong. And I've run out of time here. I've had all sorts of things that I wanted to say, but I'm not going to say them. So you have been listening to CU Immigration. Maybe I'll come back to this again sometime. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But we'll probably see you next week. Until then, think about it. Think about doing something to make the world a better place, and then try and do it, because everybody has to start somewhere, and we all have to start in small ways. And even if it's not about immigration, just do something. Be a good person. I think if we all try to do that, the world will be a better place. And that's it for now. See you later. Bye.